Right, we're rolling.
Okay. Hi, Joy. Professor, excuse me. I am Lucas Brazier. I am group leader this week. So,
I'm Jessica. I'm Josie. Mariah. Allie.
okay. So, this week it was a difficult post for me. I could have missed something, and a lot that we talked about in this week's our post was revolved around language. Language seemed to be the main topic we were talking about. So there are multiple questions presented to each individual, asking about, um, a lot of it came to academic language and conversational language. And we didn't exactly all talk about the same questions, we didn't talk about all the same questions because I think the first question was the main question for everyone. And um, one I noticed was on, um, it asked about VIX. VIX, which is, it stands for instructional, it's a different type of language than academic language.
Basic interpersonal communicative skills.
Oh!
That's it.
Oh my gosh, sorry. I know exactly what it is. Communication major.
Yes, so it's a difficult one. I don't know if I answered this question correctly. However, that being said, there was a difference between VIX and one other one, which
Cal.
yes. And so this is the difference between academic language and conversational language.
What's Cal? Did
How
I
do we
totally
say-
miss a paragraph or something?
Academic language proficiency. We didn't all have a question about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So did we see the
Yeah.
second video? The one with just the two women who are talking?
Oh, okay.
And
Watch the videos.
And so one thing I would like to talk about, we don't have to talk about it. Could be the difference between academic language proficiency and conversational language, and the differences between that each individual has that will take place in a classroom, and how one can incorporate a healthy mixture or something that helps include both of these types of languages into the classroom.
Did you guys see the diagram that was in the book and it had to do with the science experiment? I don't know if I was the only one that kind of looked at this. Had to do with the science experiment with conversational language on one side and academic language on the other. Did anybody else look at this? Or is that it?
I skimmed over it briefly and then I read
Okay.
your explanation.
So, that just reminded me of what Lucas just said about how do you merge the two. And this teacher was doing a science unit. I don't remember what it was on. And she wanted them to eventually get to a point where they could write about their science experiment in academic language. But before that happened, she did like a conversational. She described two terms to the students and had them use those terms in their conversations with each other talking about the science experiment. I don't remember what page it's on.
That's fun.
Yay, yeah, that's it.
So she had them moving kind of from conversational way
To talk about
their
their science
and
experiment
moving one step
at a time by
into
having them go from talking about the terms. She included like two terms, regress, no, not regress. Sorry. Repel and attract.
Okay.
Oh, with the magnets. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
She incorporated those so that the students would know how to use those words in their conversational language when talking to one another. And then she slowly went from that to they had to give an oral report using those, those terms to a journal entry. So you're going from, like speaking to writing and then to academic writing by doing a science report. So I don't know if that's one way to kind of like
Yeah.
merge the two.
No, I like that. I like kind of having that step by step. How you, I liked that it showed that you can have a conversational way and an academic way to talk about the same thing. So that it doesn't isolate, like, we use conversational language when we're talking about this, and we use academic language when we're talking about this, but we can kind of use both languages to talk about whatever we want to. And then it was kind of a step at a time, because you can't just necessarily expect students to jump right in and have the academic language necessary to write their science report. So it kind of is the process of scaffolding the teaching of how they should use that academic language.
I think I wrote something about how academic language is very like vocabulary based, and how if you give a student a list of like, I don't know, like 25 or 35 vocabulary words and say, okay, memorize the definitions to these, memorize these, they're not going to remember them. Whereas if you give them like 5 vocabulary words a week and really go in depth with what it means, how it relates to the unit, you're going to build and scaffold that academic language for which they can use whilst in the lesson, and then also like carry it on with them throughout education and their career.
Yeah. I like that. I definitely remember doing vocabulary lists.
I
And
think
we
there
would
were
do
always
like,
20 words.
yeah, we would do like lists of 20 words or whatever. And then after every certain amount of weeks, we would be tested on like all of them, like 5 weeks tested on 100 or whatever. And once you get to the 5th week, it was like, I don't remember any of those. I just like memorized them for the week and then forgot them, you know.
I remember one teacher would have us do, we would have like spelling tests with 20 words, but for like vocabulary, each week had a new like vocabulary word. So one that I like just remember learning was ravenous, was one of our like vocabulary words, and it always had to do with something that we were doing that week in our writing or something. Ravenous.
What are you doing?
Must have been really hungry. I don't know. But that's how this teacher in particular kind of merged, because ravenous is not like the best example of them, but it's the one that I remember. And we would have to use that word like throughout our writing that week. So I don't know if that's
Interesting.
cool.
That's like taking it to another level, because not only are you learning about the definition and why you need to learn it, but you're also doing like a practical use of it. You're using it in your writing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's one way to kind of think about academic language and how you can incorporate it into like a unit.
I remember doing like, I don't know if you guys did these, and they kind of explained in one of the things that we read that it was the squares, and then like the top left it was the definition, and then in the top right it was like a sentence or an example using the word, and then in the bottom left it was like an illustration of the vocabulary word, and then on the bottom right it was like something. It was like the opposite of what the vocabulary word meant, and then like the vocabulary word was in the middle.
I did lots of
You did lots of those, yeah. I remember those really helping, because you're learning about the definition, you're using like the practical use of it, you're putting like a physical representation to it, and then what it's most definitely not. So I thought that was a really good, that's something I'm going to use in my classroom for my like certain vocabulary words. So I also think it would be interesting to incorporate like the bilingual portion of academic vocabulary. Like they talked about it like hypothesis, and then in Spanish I can't remember how they said it was, like hypothesis or something like that, but it was very, very similar. It was like a cognate to it. And like supporting, if you have a lot of bilingual speakers in your classroom, having the English word and then having the Spanish word, or whatever the other most common language in your classroom is. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's good, because academic language is often something that ELLs struggle with. And I don't remember whose post, but they were saying, they pointed out that, that the conversational language is usually, in English, is usually like from Anglo-Saxon roots, the words that we have, whereas the academic language is usually Greek and Latin roots, where you can kind of like break it down. Who was it that was saying that?
It wasn't me, but no.
Okay.
That was me, yeah.
And so, if it's those ones that are from Greek and Latin roots, yeah, it was talking about the cognates and how, so two words in two different languages that sound very similar. And so for students that are ELL students, and they usually struggle with academic language, to be able to make those ties of academic language to their first language would be really valuable.
It's just like, oh, sorry, go ahead with this.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just gonna say, because it takes time for academic language to accumulate. You know, conversational language is something that is learned much quicker. So it's so academic language and be able to tie that to a you know, another language. I think that's a challenging component. You know, like you could say that it's a difficult thing to even do. I mean, even learning a second language to begin with is difficult, and and I think you know, there's certain peculiarities amongst the language that takes place, and you know, I don't like just like, you know, there's so many different techniques. You know, Josie, you talked about this, boxes, writing a definition and writing like a you know, the opposite meaning the word another box. I think that's like so organizational, so structurally based, and understanding that there are, you know, different techniques and different ways like that of learning in language is important to me. I could say that I do care about languages and about how one is fluent in a language, and how one really speaks to an appropriate audience in an appropriate manner. And I'm not saying that like one, like, you know, has to adapt. I'm just saying learning these techniques and learning different ways are good. So.
Yeah, I think it said in the book somewhere that it takes 2 years to do conversational language and
It's like
4,
five
5
to 7 for
academic
academic
language.
language.
And so if you have like if you have like an 11-year-old, for instance, come into your classroom, are you just focusing then from whose native language isn't English and they just come from another country? Are you focusing then just on conversational language when you're assessing them? Like even in papers or whatever, not papers, but like worksheets or.
What do you mean by assessing them? Like assessing them on their conversational language or on their academic language?
Conversational, like are you assessing them on conversational language?
I would think so, yeah. But then it also brings up how you balance conversational language and academic language.
I think we should still have some expectations for developing academic language in them that we can assess, but to not expect them to be up to speed with the other 11-year-old students.
Yeah, I'm just wondering like where that.
But you still need to assess if there's any progress, because it takes 5 to 7 years, but that doesn't mean that after 5 years they just get it and along the way they get it. You know what I mean? So there's going to be steps until they get there. So we still assess them. But
just wonder like how much, like what's, I guess there's not really a ratio. Yeah. What ratio did I expect you?
Yeah.
And also you have to think that they're getting their conversational language not within the classroom, or not just within the classroom, but they're getting it like out on the playground and all over.
Yeah, I guess my question would be like, so for instance, I'm not going to be in elementary schools, and I'll be doing English language arts. So if I have an assignment that's like write 200 words on why, you know, the sun is yellow, whatever color the sun is. should I just focus on the conversational language? Like, are they writing just in conversational language? And then giving them like one suggestion from that,
Well, I think
you know?
I think
in school they want you to be academic though.
but you have to start
But you have,
off.
yeah, you have to start
yeah,
off
sorry.
as conversational, so.
I think
But that depends on the grade level.
well, and I also think it depends on
Well, each student too is
How-
different.
how high the English proficiency is within your students. Because if you have a group of ELL students who just immigrated to the United States and they're very, very basic English proficiency, I'm not quite sure if I'm using that right, like English proficient. But I think if you have someone come in and their basic English speaking skills or writing skills, you should take what you get with how they write to start off, and then have that as a basis and build off of that. And as you're saying, like, oh, this is a great paper, but I think you could tweak a couple of things. Like, rather than saying this, why don't you try saying something like this? And kind of.
I'm just wondering if there are like guidelines for assessment of it. You know, some kind of like,
That's a great question.
like if you have an L1 in your, or whatever, if a student is identified, I don't know what the correct term is, as like being, like a level 1, then is there like some sort of guideline or like best practices or something to be like these, I don't know, like
For what to expect from them, or what?
or like how to assess them, I guess.
So you're talking about like how to grade.
Yeah, like how do you?
So if you have a group of 20 students and you have assigned this 200-word essay paper and whatnot, how do you grade someone who is very, very fluent in English, both conversationally and academically, and then you have an ELL student who just...
Because you want to be fair. I'm just wondering if there's like a...
That kind of connects to one of our other questions. That was like the A student versus the C student type of thing.
Yeah.
My question wasn't really clear there, but it's just what I think about.
Keep you waking.
Yeah. It's anxiety. How am I gonna assess?
How did, if we have to move on, how did y'all learn academic language within your own personal educational experiences?
Getting like really bad grade. Honestly, like when I think of, well, I guess to me academic language now means like college. But so going back to, are we talking like elementary school? Or?
Yeah, like elementary school, middle school, even high school.
The only thing I can remember is like use transitional phrases.
I know one thing I talked about in mine was I remember some instances of like direct instruction with academic language, like the vocab test and that kind of thing that's teaching the academic vocabulary or whatever. But I think also just how teachers speak to you makes a difference in like that teachers don't just like baby talk kindergartners, that kind of thing. This is more abstract than necessarily my personal experience because I don't remember everything my kindergarten teacher said to me. But if teachers use academic language so that students are able to learn to emulate the language that they use, then that's kind of like a more subtle way of introducing academic language. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
As they in some of my practicums, they said don't speak to them as though they're babies, like talk to them as if they're just like a person. Because although you may use words that they don't understand just yet, they will take those words and absorb them. And then later on, they'll use like the context clues and figure out other ways. But they now have that vocabulary and that knowledge in their brains, rather than saying like, I don't want to say like dumbing it down. But they need, again, that goes back to like that zone of possible development. That like little push outside of their comfort zone is what's going to make them propel through their learning.
If what is oversimplified,
Then they're not going to learn.
to learn, yeah. So I think there's a place for explicit instruction, but here even just talking about not explicit instruction, like the way that you talk in everything that you're talking about in the classroom should use academic language so that students can emulate it. They have a role model.
One thing that I just remembered in elementary school learning was my teacher that I had in 5th and 6th grade used the same like format and the same phrases for our like English writing assignments to like our science experiments.
4th, 5th, and 6th grade teachers all use the same?
No, 5th and 6th grade.
5th and
I
6th
had the
grade
same
teachers?
teacher
Huh.
for both grades. And so like using the same, it was like, what do you guys have, like history or something? Law history. You know how it goes, like, if you get a paper, for instance, you do your introduction, then you have your, like, what you're stating first, next, then finally, kind of. It was using that same structure in all subjects.
Okay, I kind of see.
And, because like in a science experiment, like, if this is true, then that,
Mm-hmm.
and we can conclude this.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was using that same, like, format,
That academic structure
that academic structure across all of our subjects
to teach it.
to teach it.
So that it sinks in.
Yeah, so even when she was doing a lesson like on math, well, if we have this division problem, then this means we have this many apples, and we can conclude that. And so in all future like writing, whether it was for like a science report or a book report, or we never had more writing in math, but you know, health class, whatever, I would always go back to that in my mind. First, next, then is that this.
It's interesting because that's the exposure to it is what makes you remember it, and then also showing that it has value cross curriculum.
Yeah,
Like you don't just use it in English, you use it both in like
I still use it.
science and math and history and so forth. I think that's really cool.
That's ravenous.
My dad used to give me a word a week. He like loves to give me outside of school homework. And I know he was weird. He made me memorize like the army alphabet, like alpha, beta, and but he used to give me words, and 2 words that were like really stuck out to me because I had to just ingrain it in my mind was décolletage, which is like in Victorian times women wore really low bodices.
Okay.
And they used to decorate their chest with like jewels, and like this portion right here was called the décolletage, and you decorated it. And then a charcuterie, which is a like meat smoking house. So it's like,
How old would you say that you were when you were introduced to this
like 10 or 11.
Wow.
So it's just like that little thing, like you throw a word at a kid and you say, okay, this is your word for the week, and you're like, oh, I remember it, that's fine. And you start like using it, and I've actually read books that have been like, oh my gosh, that's a décolletage, I know what that means. Just that gratification of being like, oh, it pays off.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, love it all.
I know sorry, it's a little off topic, but I work at a daycare over the summers, and there's one dad, I think he's like an engineer or something, and he's really good at art, and on his kids' lunches, they have like, they bring their Tupperware, and every day he'll put a sticky note with a word and draw a picture of that word, so they'll like come in and show me like, the word for the day is watch, and he like drew a little watch on it. So like, that's a watch. I'm like, where else do you see a watch? If like another teacher has a watch, that's a watch, you know? And so, which isn't in the classroom learning, but I just liked that, like, I was like, parenting tip even, sorry, off topic, but how parents can kind of scaffold that learning too, like, from a young age.
Well, that kind of segues into the video with that awesome song about the different type of capitals.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting.
Which was really interesting because I never really thought about, because there was 4 of them. There was like linguistic, cultural, knowledge, and social. And like how those can set you up to go into class. And she was talking about being in that chemistry class and having these two knuckleheads down the road from her who would never study for anything but would get A's, and she had to study so hard and she would get B's, and why that was different. And then she was like, yeah, their like bathroom reads were Time magazines, and mine were comic books. And she's like, their academic language at home was at a much higher level than mine was, which is why I have to work harder in school. And I never really thought about that, about how everything, well, I guess I should have thought about how everything is just so interconnected. And it's like, wow, that's really something to take into consideration with your students in your classroom, because it's like they're not all going to come from a household where their toilet reads or like the Nobel Peace Prize lists and all of that. So you're going to have students who are at different levels. They might have different work ethics, but their setup at home is going to be different.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember when we were little, my parents always had Calvin and Hobbes in the bathroom.
I loved Calvin and
Calvin and
Hobbes.
Hobbes, but I don't know if you guys have read Calvin and Hobbes comics, but Calvin's like in first grade, but he's funny because he has a very academic vocabulary actually. So he just like says things that seventh graders don't say, and will just like has his little imaginary friend Tiger that he thinks is real, and they just have like these funny little conversations that are really witty. And I remember like being in the bathroom as a kid and reading it, and then would like take it out and be like, Dad, what does this word mean? Like all the time, because I didn't get it. So even something like that, like even different comics might have a different capital value in the language that they use. Because I remember there are a number of words that I learned from Calvin and Hobbes, you know, like there's value in that too.
Yeah, there's so many different ways for us to learn as not only educators but as even parents, even parenting. Like I'm not trying to say that I want kids because that's like I'm anyways 23 whatever. So I think that there's so many different techniques because it all depends. Like when I was younger, my parents like I didn't. You can't say that I read really a whole lot. It was kind of like my parents like they were very very lenient, and my parents they're different. Like my parents are different from most other parents. Let's see, like when I was younger, I think like it's kind of talking about educational sake. My parents like for education, I also kind of read comic books. I wasn't I wasn't really into reading when I was younger, and that's just because I like at times I could like miss some stuff with like reading comprehension and and like for me I was like, wow, this is just like way too difficult, way too like I don't even know how to even like really express myself about it. So so one thing that I did care for was was I hate to say it, was TV. I was terrible kid. I watched this is in the past. I watched way too much TV. So nowadays I cut down my TV use and I can relate to language because in language there's all these different types of programs that won't even be bothered with their academic language or their conversational language. It's it makes you wonder because I feel like that can like because like some days not every day is gonna be like one's like best day, not every day is gonna be like one's like worst day. It's even like concerns for even language as well, because like I mean there's even kids like when they're on the playground and they'll kind of like they'll like just like learn and speak language in a conversational manner using Bix language more than count. So it's nice to know that there's like different types of languages out there, and to learn to understand certain strategies of teaching these languages. Like
I was gonna say that even though like you can still learn academic language from TV shows.
For sure.
There are plenty of especially children TV shows that when you're watching them, they're teaching children like different words or different I don't know, values, like the magic school bus and stuff.
And you can't not learn like from some TV programs.
Like the Big Comfy Couch or whatever that one was.
I had the doll from the Big Comfy Couch.
And you had Arthur, and you learn like dinosaur fossils and stuff. But I just remember that episode. So even if, like for instance, I did not do a lot of reading when I was younger, and that might have hurt me, but I don't think that watching TV necessarily hurt me either. Even though I didn't really watch a lot of TV because we didn't have cable, so it was kind of like. But I don't think that like. I wonder how much of an impact that has.
Well,
What the is like
oh, okay. So like, I think it was from the video where it kind of said like your parents kind of influence how much your
Yeah.
knowledge or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, like my parents, they didn't go to college or barely finished high school, and my grandma didn't finish high school. So for me, like I wasn't exposed to like maybe the proper language, or like I wasn't given books, or I didn't always have a TV. Just for me, when I went into elementary school, I was like really far behind.
Well, yeah, I was too.
how do we as educators, like, I don't want to say like balance it out, but have support for all the students who come in at different levels?
I know for me, they like put me into a resource room.
I went into a speech class.
Yeah, and but I don't know if I would have gone into the resource room anyways. Like I don't, even if I was given like books to read, you know, before I went to school or was read to a lot by my parents, I wonder if that would have, how much of an influence that would have had on whether or not I was like in resource room for so long. Because I'm sure there is a correlation, but I just wonder like what it would have
I
had.
was gonna say, there's the Spark Notes and stuff like all of this, like Spark Notes. Spark Notes. I'm sure we can all relate to Spark Notes. It's like a necessary. I don't know if Joy knows, but Spark Notes is pretty much a program where you don't even have to read a book to get a summary of certain parts of the book.
And an analysis.
It's not
Character,
even-
themes, symbols.
So I feel like that's even like, even like further days discouraged myself from even like wanting to read more, and that's I'm not trying to say really a whole lot by it, but it's it made me think of it. I don't know.
Spark Notes? I mean, I used Spark Notes in high school, so I didn't have to read the books that we had to read. But I hated the books that we had to read. Like, I did not like The Grapes of Wrath. And I don't want to spend 6 months analyzing The Grapes of Wrath in the turtle chapter, or whatever it was called.
Yeah, I think just speaking of like teaching language and things, I took at my community college a British literature class, and I also took an American literature class. And the American literature class, I think I took it first, and it was like she expected us to read like 2 novels a week.
Yeah.
And
That's how
Two
some of my
like
classes
full
are.
novels.
like 2 novels, yeah, a week. And I have always been kind of a slower reader. And so I was like, are you kidding me? And I tried to keep up for the first couple weeks, and then had to Spark Notes so much of it because I was just drowning in the amount I had to read. So I was like, I do sports, I do other things, I don't have time to just read every moment that I'm not sitting in the classroom. And so I just I couldn't keep up. And then I took a British literature class a year later, and I was like, I can't believe I have to take this class. The American lit class sucks so much. I don't want to take this. And I just needed another literature class. And so I took it, and he only had us read 4 books throughout the whole quarter. And I loved that class. Like, I had such a sour taste in my mouth from the American lit class. I was like, I hate reading. I don't want to read the books. And then this other one, we read 1 Shakespeare play, 1 poem that was 300 pages or something, and a couple novels. And which I liked, but no one else does. But it, like, I really enjoy that class, and I think it just makes such a difference in, like, I don't know, you can't, if you expect too much of your students or put too much on them,
They'll just check
they're
out.
they're gonna check out, or they're gonna find a way to get out of it, like Spark
Mhm.
Notes or something else, or some other thing that they'll come out with in a few years, some app that gives you a summary of everything, you know, whatever. And so just catering the amount of work that you expect students to do and the level of work that you expect them to do to what they're actually interested in doing and capable of doing without just overwhelming them,
Yeah.
you know.
I think. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, I just.
Oh, I was gonna say one of my teachers was actually talking about this today, saying how if you and it's probably different for elementary school teachers, I'm assuming, because you guys are teaching pretty much the subjects. You have control over how much homework your student has, right?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
pretty much. Yeah.
And where in like secondary, and I'm sure it's true in some elementary schools too. Like if I'm teaching the English language arts class, I should not assign more than 30 minutes of homework, which is 10 pages of reading, like a night, because they're going to have math homework, they're going to have science homework, they're going to have their electives homework, like stuff they're taking Spanish, they're going to have Spanish homework.
I always wondered about that in high school. About
So
if
then
like
you're
the
gonna-
teachers collaborated on like
Yeah.
saying, oh, I'm gonna like assign this much homework this night, so you make sure you, because it always felt like everything's slammed down at once, like
Yeah,
everything is due at once.
So if you're giving your students like a book to read and they have to read it in 4 weeks at home, that was like a 240-page novel. And but do you really want your students to have at least 2 hours of homework a night, even if 30 minutes of it is just yours? Because think about all the students who do after school like activities or sports. So it's like, how much can you expect at home?
Well, then you have to think about like the student situation at home. Like, are they coming from a family of 12 that live in one apartment? And so, do they really have the setting or environment where they can do all of that homework?
Yeah.
Or do you need to provide like homework help after school, where they have like a safe place, a quiet place, and an environment that they can do homework?
But then how do they get home?
Yeah. There's always like that one thing that everyone's like, but.
There's like so much you have to worry about and like take into consideration as a teacher.
Care is important. To care about students, but even to actually fully understand the students. And as a teacher, there's never pressure for any of us to actually like understand our students as an individual person. However, I think as a teacher, I personally in the future, I would like to understand my students because that way I can fully learn to understand certain techniques that that I may be able to incorporate in order to further their education in a more positive light. And you know, we can't all say that we're all gonna like be like the same teacher. You know, we can't all say we're like the same teacher. You know, it's like Jessica, you can't know how like I'm gonna teach. You know, or I I can't know how you're gonna teach. You know, and that's only one thing as a teacher that where it comes to even collaboration of assignments that take place of excuse me of assignments that take place and working together as you know as teachers because again I hope teachers like they discuss things with themselves wherever that may be and I hope it's good to even recognize that certain things like this even understand because now that I see certain parts of education where it's difficult to even really to say. I don't really know how to say it, but there's just so many learning techniques out there, and understanding that even for certain subjects, it's good to know how much time one thing is able to take place one thing could take place, and how much time that that homework can take, or or to understand that the homework could even be more than you actually think it is. Because for teachers to be able to systematically coordinate, that's a huge task in itself. I feel like the level of organization, the level of studiousness. That's a word.
Sure.
The level of
It can become a word.
Lucas, one thing that you mentioned in your post that I really liked is you were talking about podcasts as a tool that you use kind of to develop your academic language, or that you listen to for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. But I liked that because I think that is something that is really valuable because there's like so many different podcasts out there, and there's some that are geared to specific subjects, and some that are out there for like the hyper neuroscientists or whatever, and some that are geared for kids, and some that are geared for kids science or whatever. And I really like the idea, like I like that you brought up podcasts as developing academic language, because I think that's really cool. Could be something that would be really cool in a classroom, whether it's a high school classroom or an elementary classroom or whatever, because
specifically, if I may.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say specifically Joe Rogan is like my favorite.
Joe Rogan.
Is my favorite
That's a good podcast.
podcast channel, because Joe Rogan he's a very knowledgeable dude who has gone through a lot of experience being not only the host of Fear Factor, he's also has, I think he has two daughters. His two daughters, so he's also a father. And so I mean, Joe Rogan he has quite a bit of knowledge. He has over Joe Rogan has seen way too many guests, a gross amount of guests. He's seen, I think, he has almost over 1,000 episodes. Yeah, he has over 1,000 episodes, and yeah, he has too many episodes. So, so Joe Rogan, like the fact that I like him is because he has guests like Jordan Peterson come on. Jordan Peterson is a hyper intelligent.
he's an interesting guy.
Awesome. Yeah, philosophist. I don't know if you know much about him, but
I haven't listened to Joe Rogan's podcast, but I listened to Sam Harris. He's talking with Jordan Peterson as well. He's an interesting guy. But yeah, no, they're really interesting and intellectually stimulating, and maybe not elementary appropriate because there's academic language in there. But I think it would be cool, like you're just talking about different ways to incorporate academic language, and I think that one theme is just that it needs to be a variety of experiences that use academic language. So having students write, but what if we have our kids like make podcasts and try to model it in a way that they use the academic language, have them make videos or have them whatever it may be. I think it just could be a cool tool for to have students listen to and talk about and make or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like lesson plans on like incorporating academic language and technology, like fusing the two together.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I hate Pinterest. Just because it never lets me sign in.
Well, there you go. I feel lost on there.
What do you mean?
I'll just gonna spend hours on it.
I like
to another.
a bajillion hours on it. Oh, that looks interesting, and then it's just like a wormhole. It's just okay, I'm done.
I should listen to Sam Harris podcast.
Oh, it's interesting. Called Waking Up.
No.
Name of the podcast.
So we are now at 43 minutes. Do we have any closing comments, questions, concerns? Everything before we go off into Thanksgiving. 5 days that we don't have to do.
Your day.
Yeah.
Okay, Thanksgiving.
We don't have to say anything else.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
Cool. See you next
Bye.
week. Enjoy.